Welcome to the Cherland podcast, where I, Cherland, meet up with a musician, figure out what makes them tick, see what kind of life experiences they're bringing into their music, and possibly hear a song from them. On today's episode, we have Aviva Le Fey, and we talk about things like magic, songwriting, ancestry, and the power of stinging nettles. So I hope you really enjoy this conversation with me and Aviva. First off, thank you so much for making 53 weeks of videos for me to watch on Aviva Sings Through the Apocalypse. That most people, their videos consist of play the song and then there's claps at the end. There's like no personal information. So these videos were like, oh, nice. I can actually like learn about this girl through these videos.
Oh my God.
So it was very
personal.
helpful. Yeah, things from like...
Oh my God. I like cried so many times.
Yeah, it's a theme. So first off, so many people during the pandemic started streaming like once a week, twice a week, doing it all the time, but very few people made it a year. So why do you think you got that far? Why was it that valuable to you, you think?
Part of it is that people let me know how important it was to them.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, I didn't have a huge audience. It was kind of like average, Facebook, like, it's hard. I don't really know how they count the actual like viewers, because I think if you're scrolling past it and it accidentally plays because you lingered for 2 seconds, it's like you watched it.
Yeah.
But like while I was actually recording, there would be maybe 15 viewers, but it was the same 15 people almost all the time, and those people were super dedicated. And they would say like, this is the thing that I look forward to all week. Wow. This is what's giving me structure. This is what... Wow. And I was just like, well, okay. I mean, what else do I have going on? It was easy. And sometimes it was a little bit inconvenient. Like I did do some traveling and then I'd have to find a spot with internet.
Yeah.
Actually, at the beginning, it was very inconvenient because we had really bad internet here. And so that's why at the beginning, everyone thought I lived in my van still. And I was like, no, I can't live stream from home because our internet's so bad. So I would drive like 20 minutes into town and just have better. I would just be doing it off of like my cell reception.
Wow.
But I didn't have cell reception or internet here. So
yeah, you
that's
must
why
have a killer data plan.
In the beginning, it was all on my. Yeah, I do. I won't promote it because Verizon doesn't need my.
It doesn't.
Doesn't need my help, but unlimited data.
I don't know how it became a Verizon commercial. I have some assumptions on why people, other than structure, were tuning in every week. In your opinion, what were they coming for, other than structure?
Well, that's nice. I maybe don't give myself enough credit for the music. I think I really enjoyed the live streaming. Not every week. Like sometimes I would just be grumbling at my housemates like, I don't want to fucking play anything right now or whatever, because I would just be in a bad mood. But then eventually I realized I could just bring my bad mood to the live stream and be honest, like, this is what I'm mad about, this is what I'm sad about. That's why I was crying all the time, is because like even before George Floyd was killed, there was like, now I can't remember his name, but the man who was bird watching in Central Park and like got that woman with her dog was Am I supposed to not be swearing because
you can say what you want?
Okay, great. I was just upset all the time.
Yeah. About
so many different things. And I think people respond to that. And actually like a few weeks ago I had a live stream where I was really, really, really upset, and I'm gonna cry just thinking about it. It was ridiculous. But I was really upset, and I was really conflicted about how to like shut it down or express it. Mm-hmm. And then I was talking with one of my housemates like 5 minutes before I started playing, and I just started crying and I couldn't stop. And I was like, well, here we go. And I cried, like really, really cried, like had to stop singing songs the entire hour of my live stream. And I've never had more people stick around for it. So I don't know.
That's amazing.
People miss emotionality, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah.
What do you think was happening?
I mean, you answered the question, which is you're a whole person, and somehow when you bring something real to bear, that's in my opinion what's so important about singer-songwriters in general, is the ability to convey a real emotion in a public forum. And there's a lot of music that doesn't really lend itself to that. That's a little bit bravado, and I'm just not a fan of bravado. And I think that the world digs bravado, like on like a hype level. Like everyone likes to get hype to bravado. But bravado like really let a lot of people down in COVID. Like there's because there was nothing holding it up. And what holds up people during times of like real pain is like love and support and like real emotion. And it seems like you have that. So
as I'm like crying, just sitting here.
Yeah. Well, there's like, so there are people who are just cryy. They just cry a lot. That's a thing. When you get old enough, your eyes just kind of like water all the time. I had a really old buddy, and his eyes would just like water, just all. And it wasn't that he was crying. It was just like water comes from his eyes. But when you're crying over things that are real and you're showing the emotion that people are feeling, it's a release for the people there, and I think that's a huge service and a really hard thing to figure it out. But going into things I learned about you through watching these, we learned obviously cat tricks, life updates, vintage clothing trivia, but I also learned about you like go on writers retreats and like have a songwriting group. Can you tell me about that?
Yes, I can. So I came to music pretty late. That's not true. I started playing bass classically when I was in 6th grade. Mm-hmm. And I always loved music. But as a bass player, like I never got into jazz. I never got into I played classical music, and I was never in charge of writing out my own thing. I just played what was written down. And it was like a control thing and an unwillingness to make mistakes and be like a learner in front of people. And then I learned guitar when I was in high school. I would write these songs, like have half of a song, and think it was garbage and never finish it and never play it for anybody. Yeah. So like I came to music early, but I never got over that insecurity until I was like 27.
Wow.
Where I did not write a single song that I was willing to like play to people until I was probably 27. And then I didn't really write a single song that I thought was any good until I was maybe 29. And I'm 34 now. Wow. So my songwriting process was also just a mystery to me. And I was like, I don't know. Other people, from what I understood, were like writing their songs as like poetry and had all the words and then would set it to music or could hear something happening. And my songwriting process was I hold my guitar, I play some chords, I mumble some like non-words over it, and then something maybe will stick, lightning strikes, and the whole song is written in like a half hour or less. Yeah. Like Little Fire, I wrote 100% from start to finish in probably 45 minutes. Wow. And I don't think I ever went back and changed anything about it. Cool. And I didn't know, like, that's great, but it would happen every 6 months. Yeah. Which is like just not I don't know, I felt very out of control of it and wanted to be able to write more. And so I went to a songwriting retreat in West Texas called the Crooked Crow Songwriting Retreat, I guess. And I just had some like, for the first time, had some like structure and some ideas of here's some songwriting techniques. Here's some ways that people use language. I'm gonna get this wrong, but sibilance, I think, where like
Oh no.
the like same sound shows up over and over again in a line. I would do a terrible job right now of trying to construct that, so I'm not going to.
Yeah.
But things like that, or I think I mentioned that there was a process of like taking a poem in a foreign language and going, I don't know what this means, but you're like, this word reminds me of that. These two words remind me of this. And then you just like do your fake transcription of or translation of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just have this pile of words that you wouldn't normally have come up with, because we can get like stuck in our songwriting with the same words. One of the women there was like, oh yeah, I always use the word kitchen.
What?
And I'm like, weird. That's not one of my words. Mine's like lonely. I'm lonely. But then you just have this pile of new words. And from that process, I had a song in it that from it was a Rilke poem. And I ended up with like this song that has the word harem in it and sin and just all kinds of things where I was just like, I don't know, it's just kind of groovy. But then in the past year with COVID, I have some friends. There's just 3 of us, and we'll do this for a week at a time. And actually, this coming week we're supposed to do it again, where we do a song a day, and we have prompts that it is for a week. We give each other prompts, so we like take turns providing the prompt, and we just go to Wikipedia's random page selector and like hit random, and then something pops up and we're like, well, that's the prompt for today. It's like atomic electron transition, or it's Stellar's J, or it's the Rocky Mountain Rocket, which is like a train line that went from, now I'm forgetting, I think Chicago to Denver. And then it's just like, okay, well, the only rules are you have to write a song with whatever those words are in it, and it has to be 30 seconds or more. Cool. And I have found this great freedom in being like, cool, how long has it been? 45 seconds? I'm done. And I've ended up with like this collection of songs that I really like, and they're not like songwritery songs. They don't have like verses and choruses. Sometimes they end up like that, but there's like this handful of songs that are just, I don't know, they're weird and lovely. Through that, I have found, I've come to understand my songwriting process more, where it is still that I hold my guitar and I play through some chords and I mumble some things. But if I ever have an idea of what I'm trying to say and I'm trying to fit that word or that phrase in, it's garbage. Yeah. And I hate it. And I want to burn it in a fire, because like what I have to do is just like clear my whole brain and let whatever's going to come through be the first line. And then eventually, like whatever the word is that I'm trying to work in, that will find its place. But if I'm like, oh, I have these 2 words that I'm supposed to use, so here's how I think it could work, and then I'm trying to cram it in, invariably I hate it. And then I'm like, I suck at songwriting. Yeah. I can't do this. I hate everything. And I could just turn in a thing that I don't like, but yeah, I might as well just practice clearing my brain and starting over.
Yeah. It sounds like even the random, it's basically a random word generator that you're using. That also clears up.
That's the other thing that we use is randomwordgenerator.com.
I also use that. It
works.
It also feels like freeing up your brain, and it does serve the same kind of function of like having things being less precious and just being willing to like take whatever comes and put it in and see how it works or doesn't at all. Do you guys give criticism to each other? Is there a critical component?
No.
Great.
We appreciate.
Yeah.
It's like you have to we just do like voice memos
Yeah.
and send them to our little group text, and by 7 p.m. that's the other
Cool.
rule. And then usually we'll just be like, oh, this line that you wrote, that's so great, or I love what you did with the banjo.
Yeah.
But no, not criticism. What's who needs that?
Yeah.
From friends, like in a songwriting exercise.
Yeah.
I think there was a thing at one point where it's like, oh, if you want to flesh out something, I could provide feedback or whatever. Cool. That was another thing I did actually with one of the friends from the song a day thing, was a 20 song a day exercise.
Wait, what?
And there were
20?
Yeah, I got to 14.
Oh my God.
And then I had to do my live stream. So
That's insane.
the exercise was, there was 4 of us from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. You just go for it and get as much as you can out of it.
Jeez.
And then at the end, you listen to all of them for all 4.
Yeah.
Which took like 3 hours.
Wow.
But yeah, and as I said, I got to 14 songs, and plenty of them were, I mean, I wrote like a punk song that was just me.
Heck yeah.
Like saying the same thing over and over again for like 45 seconds with like distortion on my guitar. And I was like, amazing. That counts. Moving on, next one. Quantity over quality.
Yeah. You have to average like 30 minutes a song on that scenario.
Mm-hmm.
That is brutal. And you still have to
Which means some of them you're just like 15 minutes. Yeah. And I took a nap because I was mad. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
There's like a whole arc, and my friend Nick Jana is who was facilitating it, and he was like also our emotional support through it. He was doing it too, and he was our emotional support. He's like, yeah, it's normal to get to this point where you're just over it, and you could hear it in people's songs, like where they started to give up.
Everything became
where
punk
they got their
music.
juice back. Yeah, just like, so like we just read the dictionary for a while.
Yeah, this next song is I Hate Nick.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of us wrote songs about our parents.
Yeah. Man, how many people were doing it?
There were 4 of us.
That's so brutal. My gosh.
Yeah.
How do you know 4 people willing to do that?
I don't,
Okay.
but Nick does.
Okay.
Yeah, Nick does. And at the end of it, I was like, wow, that was really, it felt like a psychedelic journey.
Yeah.
Where it was like, I got worked and it was hard. And at the end of it, I was just like spent and exhausted and feeling like it was really useful. And I sort of never want to do it again.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like maybe twice a year. Maybe.
Twice a year
Long
is
enough to
a lot.
forget how brutal it was.
Yeah.
And then try again.
Any of the ideas that you created that day, was it the same rule? Had to be over 30 seconds?
I don't think there were any rules.
Oh, cool. Nice. So you could just make a jingle.
But I had fun not doing it in my voice memos and doing it in GarageBand and tracking it out. And so every so often I would have harmonies or start with a bass line, like, which I never do.
Right.
And I had just every instrument that I have, which is like my acoustic guitar, my electric guitar. I have like a classical that a friend left here.
Yeah.
So I think it's mine. I put that in open tuning, which I also never do. And I have my bass. And I would just cycle each song starting on a different instrument to make it a little different.
Wow.
I don't know.
Did you decide to pursue any of them afterward? Or they all just scarred you too much?
No, there were a few. There's one that has like really stuck around. And then there are a few that I really like, but I forget about them most of the time. For a little bit, I felt really attached to a couple of them and would just like listen to them as I was driving. But I don't know. One of them's like a bossa nova lounge.
Nice.
I don't know. I liked the harmonies that I did.
Yeah.
But I don't really know what to do with them. But
Sure.
it's nice to have a backlog of songs that I don't know what to do with, as opposed to feeling like I'm preparing to record a record and I have to use every song I've ever written.
Right.
Because I have to get up to a reasonable number of songs.
Yeah. Man, when you talk about like 20 in a
day,
day, that like one song a day situation seems so easy in comparison. Like the pain is just stretched out over 1 week in a pretty calm way.
And it becomes a thing. Like, songwriting for me could be really torturous because I felt not good at it. Mm-hmm. And so much of my experience would be holding my guitar, trying to see if anything was going to show up, and then nothing would, and feeling kind of empty or scared, like, when am I ever going to write a song again? Like, I'll go 8 months without writing anything.
Oh wow.
Or I would.
Yeah.
And it was scary. Like, what if I'm done? What if they all got written and I don't have any more? And I love writing songs.
Yeah.
Like, when it happens, it feels like such a magical thing, because it's like, who thought to start with that line? Who thought to put those words together? Like, it doesn't feel like it's me. It's a very, like, mystical experience.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of heartbreaking when it doesn't happen. But my experience with the song club was, it's just like greases the wheels. And it like, I keep making myself available. That was the thing that I kept not doing, because in my nervous system, I was like, songwriting, scary, feel bad about yourself.
Yeah.
But with Song Club, by the end, it's like, oh yeah, I can write a song. Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to be good.
Right.
And a lot of the time it is.
Yeah.
I've written my favorite songs through the Song Club thing.
Cool. Which
is amazing.
Yeah. It has a generative effect. Like, the more you do it, the better you get at it. And yeah, which is why it's so sucky to get caught in that cycle of not doing it and then being scared to do it because you haven't done it in a while. It continues.
Yeah.
It gets way too scary. In your Sings Through the Apocalypse series, you continue to talk about indigenous land acknowledgement. And so I figured, because that's something that you care about, I would I personally, what, like, around what county are you right now?
I'm in Calaveras County.
Calaveras County.
Central Miwok.
Okay,
land.
Gotcha. Yeah, I'm Santa Barbara County, over on some Chumash land, and I did some reading. Also, you just learn why most of the streets are named, why they're named. You're like, oh, that's the guy who invaded. Oh my God, that's crazy. And you're like,
yeah,
and then you're like,
dark.
oh yeah, and then the missions are like, wait, where they were forced to live? Oh my God. And then you're like,
yeah,
oh wait,
and died,
yeah,
and enslaved.
It's pretty brutal. I understand the importance of learning history slightly. Not to say that I'm someone who, like, gets the importance of history. So why, for you, has this become so important and kind of entwined with your heart, it seems?
Wow. These are good questions, and I really appreciate them. Thank you.
Well, it seems like you care about it, so I want to bring it up.
Yeah, I do. I mean, part of it is so much just, like, exploding in my head right now.
Yeah.
I think our mythology as a country is really damaging, and it's dishonest, and there's such wounding that has happened, and we can't heal it if we won't look at our history. So and that's true on every level, like as individuals, if we won't look at our pain, then how can we, it just, like, there's, like, shadow work
Yeah.
where it's like you have your shadow, and if you keep it in the closet and you're like, nuh-uh, not me, nope, that never happened,
Yeah.
then it has this hold on you. And to turn back towards it and say, hey, tell me what happened. Let me know. Like, I feel sometimes like like a haunted house where there's like all of these like ghost versions of me that are like young, and they're just like screaming. And as long as I'm just freaked out by them, then it's like a scary place to live. But if instead I'm like, oh, 2-year-old Aviva that like has some abandonment issues, like, let me sit with you. Tell me the pain. I will tell you I'm sorry and you didn't deserve that or whatever. And I think as a whole country, we're just like culturally we're so committed, or a large portion of us is committed to this mythology of equality, justice, opportunities, bootstraps, and it's cruel because it's dishonest. And then it's not even just cruel to the people who are the most abused by that system and by that history, but it's cruel even it's bad even for the people on top. It's you don't get an opportunity to be whole. And so I started learning a lot about racism and the effects of racism when I have my master's in public health.
Cool.
And my focus was on the health impacts of social and economic indicators, and a big part of that is race and racism, like the experience of racism on the body, the stress of racism. And we have this like another mythology that we have that's like, well, if you're obese, then you should exercise and eat better. And it's like, who has the opportunity to exercise? What streets are safe and what streets aren't safe? Who has sidewalks? Who has lights in the evening? Where is it safe to go on a run? Who has access to fresh food? Who has the time to cook it? Who has the time to raise their kids and feed them? There's just so many things that are associated with economic indicators. And then add on top of that just being Black, being Indigenous, being an immigrant, or all the other ways of being othered in our culture. So my study of and my awareness of it really started then. And then in 2016, I went to Standing Rock briefly. I was there for about a week. As I was getting ready to go out there, I started diving in more to like the history of Indigenous people in this country. We've been really bad. Like settlers have been really bad to Indigenous people and continue to be. And to also know that like so many Indigenous people are still here and their cultures are alive and they have protected them. It's beautiful and it's heartbreaking, and I'm no expert, and I'm learning more and more to just point people to like, don't need to listen to me about it. Go read this, go like follow this person on social media. If anything, I can be an example of someone who is saying like, it's worth knowing, it's worth investigating.
I mean, there are too few good like pop culture myths to like really drive this home, but I think two that do a really good job are have you seen Avatar: The Last Airbender?
No, I haven't.
Oh,
should I?
It's honestly one of the best shows that exists. I watch it maybe once a year all the way through, and the lessons are deep. You have like the Fire Nation taking over the world, and the prince of the Fire Nation having to confront his father at the end, like understanding like we are the ones that the world is terrified of. And I was told as a kid that we were like spreading our goodness across the world, but like they're afraid of us, they hate us. And but anyway, like people think their ancestry is just related to the people they're related to, but it's also related to the land. Yeah, because you're right. Like where you live has a lot to do with what you can achieve. A buddy of mine, Micah Bornet, he's a poet down from Long Beach, and he wrote a poem about how like his first camping trip up in the mountains out of Long Beach, and he realized that he could see the stars for the first time, and he had never seen that many stars. And he was angry at God because as a kid in Long Beach, he can't see stars. And I was like, that's the saddest thing in the entire world. But
Yeah.
bridging into like ancestry and things like this, let me make sure I'm pronouncing it right. Ashkenazi Jewish and Swedish.
Yes.
Okay, great. What?
When did I mention that?
Oh, well, I learned you have a last name that is not Le Fey.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Lipkowitz, I'll do you a favor.
Great, yeah. I appreciate it. Pronunciations are always a dicey game. Yeah, do you have any like interesting facts as you continue to like dive into ancestry of like what being Jewish and Swedish means? Because I wouldn't necessarily say that. Yeah, go for it. I love a good story.
Go ahead. Well, I mean, it's not a story. It's a thing that I will talk about forever. Cool. It's the very beginnings of an understanding that it's so in the beginnings that it's more like question. Yeah, I'm 3/4 Ashkenazi Jewish and 1/4 Swedish, but I like was not raised. I mean, like many Jews, maybe wasn't raised with the religious aspect of it, but more like I don't know, we like have Yiddish words every so often at home because my mom grew up in Manhattan. I have felt this longing to connect to my ancestors, and actually like so I'm sitting at my desk in my room, and behind my desk I have this mirror, and all along the mirror is pictures of relatives of mine that I don't know basically anything about. So like, cool. This is Sylvia. She's my mom's dad's mom. This is Joan, who I did know, who's my mom's mom. And then there's like, there's just, because I have felt this like,
were they all married to like professional photographers? Like what? These are all like pretty good headshots. I think,
well, actually, yeah, the Joan, that second one that I showed, her husband, Morton, was a really great photographer. And then the rest of them, I think it was just like, back in the day, you get your picture taken like 3 times, and you really pass that one around. You nail it. Yeah. But so I've had this like desire, because part of my experience of being Jewish is going like, well, when folks came to America, they came from Russia. Wherever they came from is no longer necessarily Russia, and I don't know where it is. Mm-hmm. And even then, like, even if I can find where they came from, and I'm starting to find where they like emigrated from, and it's like Belarus or Ukraine or Lithuania. Mm-hmm. But even then, how long were they there? Because Jews in Eastern Europe, especially in the early 20th century, were on the move all the time because they were like being persecuted, and I don't know. And there's this really interesting question that other people have started to like elucidate for me of like, how much do you need to have documentation of, and how much is lost in terms of documentation? And if you're going to have a relationship with those ancestors, you have to do it in a different realm. Like, it's not a thing like, okay, I have this picture of Sylvia and I can ask my mom, what's the deal with Sylvia? I never even knew her name until a couple months ago. Yeah. And my mom knows a couple things, but I think that part of the experience of whiteness is being so severed from our lineage and so severed from our land. Like, as you're saying, like, our ancestry also has to do with the land. And forget being immigrants, like that's a whole thing where you leave the old country behind and you come here. There's also this experience that's been going on for 1,000 years, 2,000 years, 10,000 years of land-based people in Europe being decimated, whether it's through the church or the patriarchy or what. Like, to have people who are tracking the seasons, who are in communication with nature and are indigenous to the place that they're from. That is a thing that was strangled out of European indigenous people for thousands of years. Like, there's this, I don't know, like, witch revival happening right now of people who are like getting into magic, and I'm one of them. Yeah. And because it's like not believing anymore in this story that we are separate and dominant, that like humans, that our place is like within a web of creation, and that it is so true that what I do to you, I do to myself. And that's the same as like what I do to the earth, I do to myself. Yeah. Like, how could I consider myself separate when like so much of the cells inside this, like the boundaries of my skin, are not human, and I can't survive without them. Whatever that, anyway, it gets trippy. Yeah. But I think that like the biggest thing that has come from my desire to understand my ancestry has been this acceptance that I will not know my ancestry through documentation alone. And that it is my right as well to be in relationship with my ancestors through non-cognitive exploration, and, you know, through dream work or through fucking magic. I don't know, but it's great. I have never felt more embedded in a web of belonging than when I open myself up to those other ways of knowing and being in relation.
That is such a potential wormhole to start asking questions, and boy, do I want to. I'm just considering the time.
Yeah.
There are so many things I am super curious about in regards to, one, like where the increase in like witchdom and magic has increased in the last 10 years is it holds the same space as like just like general new agey religion. It's just like, but it holds its own distinct space. So one, I'm fascinated in that. I could ask questions about that for a long time, but trying to keep it within the context of you learning your ancestry is also super interesting. But I'm also so wary about just making this totally down a rabbit hole about magic.
I love magic. The one bumper sticker I have ever put on any vehicle I have on my van, and my friend Stealth gave it to me, and it says science and magic. Cool. And I'm like, that's the only thing I've ever been able to get behind enough to put it on my car.
That's a very cool bumper sticker. Okay, so I'll ask one question, and then we'll just do a total segue into a song or something.
Great. So the song will make sense.
Yeah.
It'll be a part of the discussion.
Kinda. You're talking about non-cognitive ways of experiencing ancestors. Practically, what does that look like?
One of the things that I've been doing in this pandemic time is an herbalism course that is like very much in the witchcraft vein. Okay. And actually our teacher says, like, she's like, our job as witches, I love her so much. Marisha Mirnowska. She's like, our job as witches is to learn how to master our nervous systems so that we can be available for the work that needs to be done. And it's like, if you're spun out on this, or you're anxious, or you're fearful, or you're contracted, like, there's a gift that's trying to move through you, and it can't. Through this herbalism class, it's like, how do I support my body? How do I support my mind? How do I, like, keep my energetic shield just, like, boundaried? How do I have good boundaries so that, like, I can choose what I'm dealing with and what I'm not dealing with? And so for me, in terms of my ancestry, one of the things that's been a really big part, so, like, within the New Age world, it's like super fun to be burning white sage to clear your space. Guess what? White sage is, like, over harvested. It's not, like, a lot of indigenous communities are saying, like, stop picking it, stop burning it. It's not yours.
Yeah.
Unless it is yours. But, like, for a lot of us, it's not ours. And I was like, well, I don't know what plants my ancestors used. And so part of this exploration has been, like, asking what plants did my ancestors use, and waiting for the answer. I have a friend who knows what plants my ancestors use, and she's like, I don't want to tell you. I want you to find out for yourself through, like, dream work or whatever. And it worked. And I was like, oh, rosemary and juniper and hemp and, like, all these things. And she's like, she, like, named a couple more, or pine and cedar and stuff. And another thing is that, like, nettles, stinging nettles is a plant that is everywhere in Eastern Europe and is, like, super high potency medicine, just, like, really dense in nutrients, energetically great. Yeah. And I've just been drinking that every day, like an infusion of that every day for, like, 7 months now.
Oh, wow.
And part of my experience is just, like, somewhere back there, I don't know how many generations I have to go, but there's someone back there that was also harvesting nettles and was also using nettles. And to just be patient and be like, if I can befriend nettles, then they know someone back there that can, like, help me be in relation through this plant. And it doesn't have to be, like, a giant revelation or these, like, concrete facts, or, like, zoom into, oh, I'm experiencing rafting down some river, you know, like, I don't need to, like, astral project into some past life or whatever in order to have a sense of grounded, embodied connection beyond what I can touch and see and feel in my, you know, limited human perception. Yeah. So that's one of the examples.
That is so fascinating.
And I'm also a baby at this, and I'm sure there's, like, so much politics around it. I want to just say, like, I am no expert, and I am learning, and I'm clumsy, and because I'm sure there's a lot of ways to piss a lot of people off. I just want to say, if I have in some way pissed you off, future listener, then I'm sorry. And I'm still learning.
A lot of times when people hear the word witch, they imagine taking a bunny and rubbing its guts all over your face. And,
I have Newt
and then, like,
stuff.
Throwing it over the cliff. To have the visual of a gal, like, picking nettles and brewing nettle tea is, like, quite wholesome. So I think it's good that I asked that just for that visual of being like, well, I'm sure if you were on a walk and you saw somebody doing that, you'd be like, oh, how sweet.
It's just being in relation to the earth. Like, that's for me what it means. Being in, like, actual curious relation and learning from and speaking to the non-human, the more than human realms, and believing that there's more happening than just, like, what we all kind of agree on that's happening.
Perfect transition into a song. You you put out an album of covers, and one of the covers you played I Am California, and where it's talking about like ravishing the land without being a part of it. This is one of Craigie's songs. And you also had a very appropriate story of you being about to play that with him on a stage while half the audience is evacuating their homes at the Paradise Fire. Are you interested in telling any of that story or playing that song right now?
Sure. And I also have a song. It's a shorty from
both.
The song club times that I'll end on my shorty. Okay. I Am California. First of all, I love this song. When I saw Craigie play it, this is before I was playing bass with him. It just blew my mind. And it reminded me of so many different people and so many different experiences that I've had. I was on tour with him in 2019. When was the Paradise Fire? 2018, 2019. 2018. The fire had just started, actually on my friend's property. Wow. in Polga, later determined to be a PG&E incident. We got there, and a Craigie show is like fun. He tells jokes. It's got a vibe, and we weren't even sure if it was going to get canceled. And even the sound engineer, he's getting us like, we're sound checking. He's wiring up all the mics, and he was on the phone with his girlfriend, and he's like, no, just don't, like, what are you gonna do? Just stay at your parents' house. And he hangs up, and we're like, what's going on? He's like, our house is, like, we live in Magalia, and she wants to go back and see if it's okay. And I told her just not to worry about it. And then he went back to doing work, and someone else was like, Magalia is all on fire. Yeah. Like, his house was burning. Yeah. And we're just still there. So it was a sold out show. Only about half the people came because they were being evacuated. The other half were being evacuated, or just like, I don't know. We were in Chico that night. Yeah. It was just beautiful. It's a beautiful song. I always feel like very honored to get to play it. And this time in particular felt like such a balm to offer people. It was me and Craigie and Rainbow Girls. You want that? Here's I Am California. You try to drown your sorrows. You shouldn't have taught them how to swim. And now you are right back where you began. Winter skies approaching, all alone in the wasteland. Alone is the only way that they let you in. So drink all my wine, cut all my trees, make love on my beaches, smoke all my weed, cup. So drink all my wine, cut all my trees, make love on my beaches, smoke all my weed. I am California, can't you see? Wherever you roam, you always want me. Yeah, and dig all my gold, soak in my springs, conquer my mountains if that's what you need. I am California, can't you see? Wherever you roam, you always want me. Yeah, you always want me. You always want me. You always want me.
So good.
Thanks.
Can I ask you a few quick unrelated questions, and then we can do
Absolutely.
maybe the Shorty and Georgia if we have a second?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, great. Cool. So I always ask people for any bad advice they have received about their music career.
Ooh, the worst advice I received about my music career was when I was 14. A music teacher said, if you can picture doing anything other than music, then you shouldn't be a musician because it's just too hard. It's like, it's just too hard. And I was like, great. I can picture doing so many other things.
Yeah.
And so I had like a lot of other careers.
Yeah.
I got my master's in public health. I worked in public health for a little bit. I worked in tech for a little bit as an engineer in an ad tech company because I was like, wouldn't it be nice to have an experience of being able to take care of myself financially?
Yeah.
I never considered that I could be a musician because it felt like that was for other people. So that's one.
Mm-hmm.
And another piece of bad advice that I like really believed for a long time, and I'm ready to start questioning it, is that you have to pay your dues and you have to hustle. Hey, okay, how about this? People are like, you just gotta work hard, write good songs. You just gotta work hard and write good songs. And they're like, man, there's luck too. And I'm like, it's all three. And this is what I say all the time. It's a raffle. You have to buy a ticket to play. You can work really hard, but have like shitty songs and it could still work out for you. You could have great songs and like never get anywhere. You could be lucky. You like, who knows? You have to buy a ticket to play, and you might buy 100 tickets. You might hustle so fucking hard and have the best music, and it's still there's still just that element of luck. And you could be sitting there with your 100 tickets, and then when they call the number, it's like some jerk who has 1 ticket. And you're like, but I worked so hard. It's like, yeah, I don't know. So I firmly believe that. But I also am starting to go like, the path that has been laid out, like this is how you succeed in music. You play these shows, then you play these shows, and then you get like an opening for some big fancy important person, or like the right person has to see you or whatever. And then you just tour and sleep on couches or whatever. I'm starting to think that maybe that doesn't have to be the way.
Yeah.
Because it's not how I thrive as a person. I was just on the road for 1 week, partially celebrating a friend's life transition. Doesn't matter. Yeah. Long story. Yeah. Partially to play these like backyard shows where we're doing 3 a day and we're just driving and eating whatever we can eat because, and not sleeping enough. And And I'm like, right, that's not good for me. That's not how I thrive. And I'm starting to wonder, like, if I actually prioritized taking care of myself, being grounded, I love being at home. Maybe there is a way of still having a musical career that is flourishing and creative, and where I get to be, where I have opportunities to collaborate with people that I'm really excited about collaborating with, and where I have opportunities to share what I have to share and be heard and have other people receive it, without having to like exhaust myself.
Yeah.
So that's the piece of advice that I'm starting to wonder if it's bad advice, about just like hustle, 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 grind, grind, grind. Because who knows what will happen, like if I really do commit to not hustling and not grinding, who knows what will happen, but I'll be a lot happier along the way. So I'm giving it a shot. I'll report back.
Yeah. No,
in 20 years.
I agree with that. Lil Dicky has a line that I always meditate on and think back to, where he says, I just want to do it my way and turn the whole game sideways, show them you don't need to be resigned to the highway, you can make a path while these motherfuckers drive straight. And I've always appreciated that line, as it speaks to like entrepreneurship and finding a different route that works for you specifically. And I think about it quite a lot for a line that he's like in a silly rap song. Okay, other questions. A book that has been influential in your life, or an author?
Here, I'll just grab it from my bed.
I sleep with it.
Here's Ursula Le Guin.
Okay, yeah.
The Dispossessed, and then hold on.
Fiction fantasy.
This is a book that I will recommend to anyone all the time, forever. Braiding Sweetgrass.
Nice.
By Robin Wall Kimmerer. And a lot of people are like, I know everyone keeps telling me to read that, but I have it, but I just haven't started it. It changed my life.
Okay.
And it changed my life in the following way. She's indigenous, Native American, and also a scientist. I think she's a botanist and also a poet. So like her writing is just beautiful. And she has these trainings in two different deep lived experience in two different realms. And one is more, scientific and based on observation and repeatability and all these things. And one is a different kind of knowing and a different kind of like relationship to the earth. The first book that made me think that taught humans do not have to be a scourge upon the earth. Like, we can live as stewards and in beauty and protecting and serving and being fed and nourished by, and that it doesn't have to be a life that is like withdrawn and lonely and hard. Yeah. And it's just a beautiful book. So yeah, Braiding Sweetgrass, life-changing. Yeah. And just read it when you're like, I'm not in the mood. Just try it.
I like that you're already going against like criticism that hasn't happened yet. But I also know so many people who have been like, I've heard about that book. And me being one of them. But yeah, right now I'm going through a Bruce Springsteen audiobook, which is so. And then the last thing was the last thing that moved you, whether it's a piece of art, whether it's an interaction.
Okay, give me a second to think about that. Okay, well, as we have already established, I cry a lot.
Right, yeah. So it is not necessarily the last thing that made you cry, because that was, 30 minutes ago.
Yeah, I'm going to give two answers. Okay. One is anything by James Baldwin ever. Okay. Any, video clip, any quote, any essay, James Baldwin. Yeah. I was scrolling through my mental Rolodex of the last time I was really, really crying. And it was after my last live stream. So I did my Wednesday live stream. I did it for 53 weeks. And then I stopped because I just have other things that are coming up. And it was a hard decision to make. But after my last one, I already had my van all packed up and I had to drive back down to the Bay immediately after. But I was like wearing this big fancy like poofy dress just for fun. And so I like finished my live stream and I was in my room changing. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, that's the end of the live streams. And I like came out of my room like half undressed, and my housemate Siobhan was in the living room still, and I was like, I'm sad. And she was like, I've been crying since you started. Oh and we just like sat on the ground and we're like, oh, that was really important. Like it was such a cornerstone of our Wednesdays. And like, cause she would always come, even when I did them in my van parked downtown, she would come sit in the front seat, and her husband Dennis also. And she's been to like pretty much every live stream, and the just whole family would get together, and to just be like, oh, that was a tradition and we created it and we were all here together for it all the time. I was like surprised because I wasn't very emotional during the live stream, but then like afterwards I was like, oh wow, that really was meaningful and really was just a thing to just keep coming back to each Wednesday.
Yeah, that's sweet. Are you willing to play Georgia and the short song you mentioned?
Yes.
As a non sequitur segue right there.
Yeah. Here's Georgia. I came running past your dunes with my arms wide as the moon to your ocean that's so far from my ocean. I'd been 6 days in the rain where I never heard my name. I came running to you wide-eyed and open. Oh, Georgia, I've been singing your song, been singing so long. I got nothing. Oh, Georgia, I've been loving like a sieve. I gave all I had to give. Now I got nothing. I never heard a night so loud drown out any city crowd. All your bullfrogs singing out got me hiding. You see, I fall in love every day. Oh, it leaves me like a wave. I'm just waiting on the moon to let the tide in. Oh, Georgia, been singing your song. I've been singing so long and I got nothing. Oh, Georgia, I've been loving like a sieve. I gave all I had to give. Now I got nothing. When I left my city home, pulled up every route I'd grown, let the river take the oars and quit fighting. I guess I thought she'd welcome me, take me where I'm supposed to be. Instead I'm clawing at your shore, and she's prying me away. Oh, Georgia, I've been loving like a sieve. I gave all I had to give. Now I got nothing.
Well done.
Just making sure I'm still recording. Okay, great.
Okay, great. That's always the fear. Do you also want to play that little short one you mentioned?
I do want to play the little short one because this I wrote when fire season was starting up here again. And I have a really hard time, like, psychologically when it's smoky.
Yeah, me too.
Because of my, like, climate change anxiety and feeling, like, paralyzed by my participation in all of the systems that I participate in that create the out of control situation.
Right.
It goes like this. When the world comes right up to your doorstep with a litany of sorrows, what do you do? Greeting each one is so relentless, and how much crying can one girl do? But did you know that before everything we were nothing, just emptiness mingled and touching? And some say that all this distance really means nothing, just mirrors reflecting back to the beginning. Oh, I find it quite exciting that our universe keeps dividing. Somewhere else I'm already dying. Somewhere else the seas aren't rising. And if every possibility is happening concurrently, then one of them must be just fine.
Songs for the multiverse.
Yeah, exactly.
Next album name.
Yeah. Exactly.
Thank you again so much. Before we close, do you have anything else that you want to plug? Anywhere you want to send people?
Not on
your Patreon.
Not on my behalf. Sure. Yeah, sure. My Patreon. I do have a Patreon. Patreon.com/ I think Aviva Music. See, things I should know. But if you look for me, Aviva Le Fey, it'll show up there. And I've been posting, I have a playlist now on SoundCloud that's private, so you can only have access to it if you're a patron. But I've been putting my demos of all these new songs that I've been writing, videos, my experience of being a musician or whatever. Yeah. And a lot of people have different tiers on their Patreon for, like, if you pay this much a month, then you get these extra things. And I'm like, everyone's at the same level. You can pay $3. I think you can pay $1 a month. You can pay $50 a month. I've said that there's like a secret tier that's super expensive, and if you join at that level, I'll tell you who all of my sad love songs are written about.
Oh, nice.
Because right now I just, like, when I play them, I just, like, look at my housemates. I mean, this is my live streaming days, and I'm just like, because they know. And I was like, ugh, that guy.
That's wonderful.
But if you want to know who that guy is, for each song.
Pay $50 and you get all the gossip.
No, because it's got to be more than that.
Oh my god! Okay, like, it's raising by the minute.
You know, like why not? Yeah, it's other people's privacy that I'm selling.
Yeah.
So gotta make it worthwhile.
Wonderful. Well, yeah. Again, great having you. You mentioned that your love language is words of affirmation. So I will do my best and say that you seem like a real emotional and like musical pillar to the people that are around you. There are a lot of people that really enjoy collaborating with you, and it is no wonder why. You're a pleasure to talk to, and I imagine you're a pleasure to work with. And you also seem like a great example of what it means to be a whole person. So there's your words of affirmation. And and yeah, really appreciate it. So thank you.